You good with that? All
Yeah.
right. Speak now or forever hold your peace. um, about 10 years ago, I saw a video. Many of you have probably seen the video, especially if you're here in the United States. And it was about a young autistic boy who was asked to sing the national anthem at a baseball game, a National League baseball game. And it was interesting because it was very quiet in the stadium, and he started to sing, and he got about halfway through. And if you've seen the video, he kind of gets nervous and he starts to laugh right in the middle of the video, right in the middle of his national anthem, singing the anthem. And because he starts to sing, he starts to stutter and he stops singing. And all of a sudden, the entire crowd joins in to help him finish the national anthem. And it was really emotional. It was really touching. And I saw it not only for that, but I saw something deeper. And I asked myself a question. I go, why wasn't the audience singing at the very beginning? And it made me think a little bit because, you know, my wife's Canadian, Dallas is Canadian. We go to Canada, we go to a hockey game. The Canadians sing the national anthem from start to finish, and they sing the United States national anthem from start to finish. But I know it's true for here in the United States, and I think it's becoming more true for humanity, that we've become so good at rescuing people, that we've been so good at solving problems, that we've been really good at putting out fires, that we stop taking proactive steps. And that couldn't be more true for this audience when it comes to people's health and lifestyle. And I was curious because I thought, well, if they'd been singing from the beginning, maybe he didn't get off track. If he had someone to hold him accountable, that audience singing. And I think as a JP member, a team member, that's part of our job, isn't it? There's a metaphor that I used when I was with James and Linda in Australia. And if you were there, and I know Christine and a couple other people have heard this before, but if you think about it and you're walking along a river and you hear a cry for help and you see someone drowning, the first thing we do is, we jump in the river, we pull them to shore, we pump all the water out of their chest, we give them mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and we save their life. And no sooner do we do that, and what do we hear? Another cry for help. We repeat the process again and again and again. And I think our job as counselors, as coaches, as JP team members is to go look upstream and see who the hell's pushing these people in. And because we've gotten so good at reacting and rescuing other people, that we haven't become as proactive and preventative, which I think is much of the message that JP shares with the world. So my challenge is, I guess, first and foremost, to all salespeople, to all entrepreneurs, to all small business owners, is to look at the cause and not the effect. Right now, we're in pretty dire straits when you look at the coronavirus. And I think you'd all agree that those people who took preventative measures to bolster their immune system to be in good health were probably less impacted by the coronavirus than those people who were waiting to be rescued or were not taking preventative measures. So the question I have right now, are we going through change right now? Yes or no? Yeah, most people are thinking, God, I can't wait to get back to normal. Is there going to be a normal to return to? Yes or no? I almost say, let's hope not, because normal wasn't really working. Normal wasn't getting us healthy. It wasn't maintaining a great lifestyle. It wasn't preparing us for the inevitable. And I think that we got a really beautiful wake-up call. We got a chance to hit the reset button and say, I need to take a look at my health. I need to take a look at my finances. Did I set aside money for a rainy day, or did I just assume that I could keep going and stretching myself, to the limits, and then someday maybe I'll be set, but we didn't anticipate or expect the unexpected. And right now we're being hit by a couple different sides, not only the virus, but also, the unrest, with the Black Lives Matter protests and, the challenges with race relations. So we are in a state of change. And I know that, I've said it many times, my favorite quote is from Eric Hoffer. And he said, in times of change, the learners will inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. When we come out of this, the world is not going to exist as usual, as normal. And I think it's going to be really exciting for those people. And that's why I want to say congratulations, first and foremost, to you, is that you're on here learning, you're on here sharpening your axe and up-leveling your game. There's a lot of the population, though, is not going to adapt or be able to adjust to the change quite as well. And if you look up, Ken Blanchard had a model called the 7 Dynamics of Change. And he said that there are certain psychological responses when change happens. Because when we first go through change, it's uncomfortable. You know, just like when you go to work out, it's uncomfortable the first time or two because you're changing the muscles you use and the effort that you make. When change happens, we feel like we're isolated or alone, that we're all by ourselves. We feel like we're at different levels of readiness. People tend to look at the negative first. Now, how many times have you shared an opportunity with someone and the first thing they point out is, oh, it's not that, is it? It's not network marketing, or I don't have to buy product, or I don't have to, you know, they look at the negative first. And that's just human nature. And that's a way for us to understand that's what they're going to go through. So we need to approach those conversations differently. A lot of people will say no or not embrace change because they are at different levels of readiness, or they don't think they have enough resources, whether it's time to devote to, you know, the business, or whether it's resources to purchase product, but they just don't believe they have enough resources. And the truth about that is that it's not that they don't have enough resources. Isn't it more true that they aren't accessing resourcefulness? And we each have that as a gift. We have plenty of resourcefulness. And if you ask better questions, if you make different approaches, you're going to be much better off. And I think the last step is that most people, when faced with change, they go, I can't wait till these changes are over so I can get back to normal, so I can get back to my old habits and the way life was. Well, the good news or the bad news, depending on which side of the fence you're sitting on, there is no normal. Change is going to be the constant. And as soon as we learn to understand these 7 dynamics, if you will, these analytical, unconscious persuasion techniques that we're embracing with our mind, until we understand those and understand that the people we invite into our business, into our opportunity, into changing their lifestyle, they're going to be resistant because they're going through the human nature of these 7 dynamics. I will share with you that most of you have signed up for a really cool ride. And that ride's called Entrepreneurship. And whether you're a solopreneur, whether you're on a team or a group of people who are working together, which I highly encourage, by the way, the good news is that, you know, I hear a lot of people say, well, you can be in network marketing, you can be an entrepreneur, or you can have a job, a job. And is there security in a job? Some. Is there also frustration in a job? Yes. And sometimes there's less risk in a job, but there's also much, much less reward. And I got a great lesson one time, and I'm gonna go back to pre-meeting Lauren, and I had an advertising and marketing company in Cincinnati, Ohio. My client was Procter & Gamble, and I was starting off my business, and it was hard work because just like taking a jet plane off the ground, you know, you expend a lot of energy and fuel to get that plane off the ground. And then once it's in the air, you're more at cruising altitude. It doesn't take quite as much effort. But I was in that phase, like many people who get started in the business are, that you're spending a lot of effort and resources and time and energy, you know, mastering the best practices of the way to do things. And I was frustrated. I started my business called Corporate Identity. It was a marketing company. I was doing ad specialty, imprints, and products for companies like Procter & Gamble. But I was frustrated with my results. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Been there? Like you did the work and the results didn't just show up overnight, and you didn't just wave your magic wand and it happened. You actually had to work and work and work, and you didn't get rewarded, but at some point you finally do. But I was in that phase of not being rewarded, and I decided, well, I'm going to look in the want ads. Literally looked in the want ads of the newspaper and said, I'm going to look for a really cool sales job because I thought I was a good salesperson. And I answered an ad and it said, if you're the very best of the best and you want to make, it's a Fortune 500 company and you want to make 6 figures plus and have flexible hours. And it sounded really cool to me. So I responded to the ad and they said, well, just show up at this interview first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever it was. And I wanted to show how committed I was. So I showed up early and I sat in this room and all of a sudden these other people started wandering in. There's like 7, 8, 10 people there. And they said, how many of you, or who's the best salesperson in this room? Now, it was one of those fake it till you make it type attitudes. And I just raised my hand and he says, okay, you're riding with me. For the rest of you, we're going to share with you somebody to ride along with. Now, here's what's interesting. I was all excited about this new opportunity, Fortune 500 company, really cool. He says, okay, jump in the car, we're going to go. We get in the car. He didn't tell us what we were going to do. He was going to demonstrate it. He was going to do a little ride along with me. And we pulled up to this gas station. He goes, it's time to go to work. I said, are we getting gas or are we going to work? He goes, no, we're going to work. So he pulls up to the gas station. He goes inside. He brings out the people who are working in the gas station. He opens up his trunk and shows them all these products that he was selling door to door, business to business. He pulled out these steak knives. He pulled out this, child's toy set. He pulled out this mattress cover and he was literally selling door to door. And I spent the entire day with him and I watched him and I listened and I learned and I paid attention and I said, you know what? I don't want to do this. This is not me. And that's okay. But I learned and I realized something. I said, if I applied the same amount of commitment and effort to my business as he did to his business, I would be successful for forever. And what's interesting is that I did. I went back and I made a commitment. Here's one thing I would challenge you to do. My dear friend and old business partner, Bob Proctor, said when he used to go into insurance companies, he said, take your calendar, open it up, and every morning at 9 a.m., set an appointment. Set an appointment every single day at 9 a.m. Go see somebody. Don't stack them all in one day, because what most people do is they push them all into one day. They get dressed, they shower, they go to work, and they do their Zoom calls, whatever it is, but they do them all in one day. And then the next day, they don't know what to do with themselves. But he said, if you get up and get dressed and get showered, get on your Zoom calls, on your appointments every morning, have breakfast with someone, have a Zoom call, there's a saying that a body or a business that is in motion stays in motion. So set an appointment every morning at 9 o'clock. Talk to somebody, have juice with someone, have breakfast with someone, have a Zoom call with someone, but make sure that you are constantly staying in motion. One of the other things I love about, our mutual friend and mentor, Tony Robbins, was he had a great saying. He said that people overestimate what they can do short-term and underestimate what they can do long-term. And the challenge with a lot of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and small business owners is that, they say, okay, I'm going to give this 30 days, or I'm going to give this 6 months. And they think they're going to change the world. And by the way, we sometimes do them a disservice by saying, hey, it's a magic wand, you're going to get rich quick. And that's the wrong message to send, because it's a business. It takes time to plant seeds, to water them, to fertilize them, to give them sunlight and make them grow. And I think what's really amazing is that you will be rewarded long-term, obviously, for efforts, as long as you don't get stuck on expecting short-term results. Now, you may get lucky and get short-term results, and you're more likely going to be rewarded long-term if you stick with it. The other thing is to choose the meaning of everything that happens to you. Now, many of you, if I've had a chance to communicate with you, I spoke in Australia and I told the story that almost a year ago, about a week and a half, a year ago, Dallas and I had a beautiful 5,000 square foot training center here in Las Vegas. And we woke up one morning at 6 in the morning and we saw this smoke in the sky here overlooking the strip. And we go, wow, must be a casino on fire. There's so much smoke. And we literally turned on the news and they said, no, it's a business right off the strip. And I go, Dallas, that's our building. And we jumped in the car, we went over there, and sure enough, we got there and we were watching literally this 85,000 square foot building going up in smoke. With it, 40 years of material, 40 years of videotapes, 40 years of book content, and manuals and research, and all my autographed books from all my mentors and friends. And at the time, people were saying, well, you took that pretty well. And I've learned through time is that, just like Viktor Frankl said in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, is that the only meaning that you get from something is the meaning you apply to it. So what's interesting now is that I could have been really upset and frustrated. I'm not saying I didn't shed a tear or two. It was frustrating, but we knew that that wasn't the real meaning. Now, fast forward 10 months later, and what happens? Coronavirus. Guess what? All meetings are canceled. All businesses and trainings no longer can take place. And now, instead of having a $10 or $12 or $15,000 a month overhead, we didn't have to bankroll that because we didn't have the training center to pay for. So now, it's a whole different meaning than it was 10, 12 months ago, or 12 months ago when that happened. So choose the meaning that's going to serve you. Oftentimes, and I know many of you, this isn't your first rodeo, you've been through, opportunities for personal growth. And that's one thing I love about this industry and this business, is that you get exposed to such great leaders and teachers and trainers and coaches and mentors. And this is a side benefit that's probably worth as much or more than the actual business itself, is that you're constantly learning and growing and improving and educating and up-leveling. So powerful to have that opportunity. So as an entrepreneur, I will tell you one thing that you must have and you must be known for, and that's trust. You must be trustworthy. And that means, to me, one of the first words when people who get to know me is the word integrity. And that is that, you do what you say, you make promises, you don't make promises you can't keep, you keep the ones you make. And I read a great book by a dear friend of mine, and he gave me an autographed copy in 2007. It was called The Speed of Trust. And here's one thing that I'll tell you about that, is that trust begins with who? Yourself, right? We have to begin with ourselves. The question is, do you trust yourself? Because until you have trust in yourself, it's difficult to have trust in your relationship. It's difficult to have trust in your business. It's difficult to have trust in your marketplace and your community. But if you trust yourself, that's the first step of other people trusting you. And what do I mean by that? That means, like, in the morning, when the alarm clock goes off, you set the alarm because you made a commitment, just like people have goals and New Year's resolutions. The question is, do you press the snooze button, or do you get up and make it happen? Because if you press the snooze button, you really don't trust yourself to keep that commitment. And it's a lot like, that's why only 3% of the population sets and keeps their goals. That's why, 3 weeks after New Year's, the resolutions have gone by the wayside. It's also, and by the way, there's a trend in network marketing that I both love and have a challenge with. And that is, when you have a 10-day challenge, for example, a 10-day challenge is a great motivator to expose and introduce people to a product, to a different change, because after they get used to it, it's no different than, like, we went to a Date with Destiny or one of Tony Robbins' programs, and if you've been to a ropes course where you climb up the pole, the higher up the pole, the more fear, but it's only a matter of taking that next step. And so I think having a 10-day challenge or a 30-day challenge is a great motivator. Here's the challenge with it, is that a lot of people go on the 10-day challenge, they go on the 30-day challenge, say, oh, I'm glad that's over, now I can go back to my old habits. They revert right back to old habits of eating, of exercising, of meditation or not meditating. So they go back into an old unproductive lifestyle. So my question is, are you demonstrating trust by saying, okay, I'm going to do this for 10 days, but then remember, we have to lead by example. If you call it the speed of the leader equals speed of the pack. Your children will do what you do. Your team will do what you do. If you're doing meetings, calls, if you're staying in motion, do they follow you? If you are extending your lifestyle changes, your eating habits, your health habits beyond the 10-day challenge, and you stay with it, they will follow you. Instead, the goal is not to do the 10-day challenge and then go back to old habits. So that's what I mean by trust. Do we trust ourselves to maintain the changes that we desire and we deserve in our life? And are those preemptive, proactive changes that will make sure that we don't end up a statistic, that we don't end up in the river and need someone to save us because our health or our lifestyle has caused us dis-ease in our body? And it's so important too that as entrepreneurs and small business owners, and another one of my favorite statements from Bob Proctor is he said that responsibility is the key to freedom. Responsibility is the key to freedom. And if we, or you as an individual, as a leader, as a parent, as a mom, as a business owner, do you take full responsibility for your results, for your health, for your finances, for your communications, for your relationships, for your environments? Because as soon as you do that, it's so freeing because you can no longer blame someone else. You can't blame the environment or the economy or coronavirus or the riots because you didn't have a nest egg set aside and now finances are worse. Now, what's great about it is that, both the virus and I think the lack of ability for most people to go back to work has actually been a benefit to most network marketing companies, because you're able to work anytime, anywhere, virtually from home, and your lifestyle didn't change that much. But for a lot of people, they're still playing the blame game. And if we're blaming someone else, whether it's the police, whether it's the misunderstanding, whether it's our government, whether it's the president of the United States or the premier or whoever, Scott Morrison or whoever your leaders are, as long as we're blaming someone else, we're not taking responsibility. When the coronavirus hit, Dallas and I were really in a great space. We had just come back from Australia. We'd just spent some beautiful time, doing 2 speaker boot camps in Melbourne. And we just got out in time because they were getting ready to close down international travel. And we came back and we realized this was going to be a big deal, especially here in the States. I know that because Australia, for those of you in Australia, in the summertime, you guys weren't hit quite as hard as we were here in the States because of the winter. But the challenge was that when we came back here, we knew there was a lot of issues that were coming up. And what happened is that we decided to preemptively and proactively, make some changes in the relationships with our clients. So our private clients, first of all, we had to cancel most of our live programs. Like many of you had to cancel your trainings and your conventions and so forth. And that was challenging. It was frustrating because we couldn't be around them, at least physically. But we said, we're going to go to our clients and we are going to tell them for at least the next 60 days, we're cutting your fees in half. So any mentoring fees or private client fees that you're paying us, we're going to cut them in half. In addition to that, we're going to double down on our ability to contribute to you. So whenever you have an issue, we're going to not just say you have to limit it to 30 calls once a week or 1 hour call every 2 weeks. We're going to give you unlimited access because it's challenging times. We want to over deliver in value. And that's 2 things that really will proactively support you in your business. And one is to provide massive value more than anyone else. And secondly, is to be unique, be different. And that's also why you've heard me say many times, and that is to educate, don't sell. Meaning instead of, syntax is real important. Don't lead with the solution, the benefit, the, how to get rich quick, how we're going to save you're going to make money or be healthier. Lead with a wow statement or something that causes people to get curious, that causes people to want to know more, that also positions you as a credible authority or expert. So that's a real big distinction, because most times, and even if it's an elevator pitch, if your elevator pitch starts with what is the problem, identify the problem, and then give them the solution. By contrast, the solution is received so much better than if you led with the solution when they have nothing to compare it to or contrast it to. So if they own the challenges of being in a job or being a 9-to-5 or not having the freedom or the flexibility to travel or spend time with their kids or homeschool, by contrast, if you start with that, the solution is going to be something they salivate for and look forward to. So Lauren, you were going to check me on time. I don't know how much
Yeah,
time we have.
I was going to ask you just a couple of questions, Scott, because you've had so many different businesses. You know, you've worked with lots of different people in lots of different industries. You know, we always talk about studies showing that 60 to 70% of our daily activities are determined by our habits. What have you seen as one habit that's really helped people become successful? You shared a little bit about, you know, the you know, like setting that meeting every morning at 9 a.m., making sure you don't do just that one day, but doing those things consistently. But what's one habit that you've seen that's really is a great tool for success for people?
Yeah, good question. I think the most important habit that I've gotten into is that, you know, I think meditation is a great habit. I do it a little bit differently. And that is that when I wake up in the morning, instead of jumping out of bed, I take about 15 minutes and set my intentions for the day. Literally, what are the outcomes? What are my desires? What do I intend to have happen? Or what are the outcomes or results I want to see as a result of my day? So I literally proactively think about and visualize and fall in love with my outcomes. And one thing that's real important about this, and this is where most people get off track, don't think about how you're going to make it happen. Just fall in love with the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, many of you have heard me say, you know, told the first class story. It's like, I decided one day I wanted to fly first class. And I didn't figure out how I was going to fly first class. I just fell in love with the idea of flying first class. And sure enough, you know, one of my clients, which is the Los Angeles Kings, called me and, you know, sent me a client who happened to be, you know, a senior VP for one of the airlines. And he came through my program and gave me a gift of literally free first class airfare. So that was 3 days later. So I think the power of intention, I know, Lauren, you have many rituals that are very powerful. So, you know, the I am cards, the rituals for working out and eating and drinking plenty of water. There's certain rituals that you go through that I think are very powerful to stay committed.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to ask you, I've got about another 5 minutes. The other question I was going to say, you know, you've been, like I said, you've been in lots of different businesses. You've seen lots of businesses, ups and downs in businesses. What was your biggest aha moment in business?
My biggest aha moment in business. Well, I think I've already mentioned a couple of them. One is, you know, think long-term and don't expect, you know, overnight results. I think, you know, if you look at musicians, if you look at artists, if you look at salespeople for that matter, they say, you know, they put in the outlier status, the 10,000 hours, and people look at them and say, wow, you were an overnight success. I mean, you and I and many people on this call have been, I know Kayla's on the call or Kyla's on the call. There's a lot of people who have been involved with Tony Robbins as well. And the interesting thing is he says, you know, people come up and say, I wish I could speak like Tony Robbins. Well, no, you really don't, you know, because first of all, Tony does Tony really well. That's already taken. So first of all, be yourself. But second of all, you and I were with Tony when he had 10 or 12 or 15 or 50 people in the room and he was doing events every single weekend. He'd go from LA to New York to LA to New York. And just like Tony, I did the same thing for 5 years. I did, you know, 2 or 3 talks at businesses every single day. And I do an event or a training at night.
Yep.
I do an event like once a month on every weekend.
It's like with Life Mastery when Shore and I being over in Fiji, and it was like, I'd like to teach Life Mastery. And it was like 36 weeks a year. Okay. All right. Every single time. And so, like you said, but there's that pride and ownership, right? Wouldn't you say as well? Like, I think there's something to be said about when you earn it, you're proud of it, and it's sustainable, and not just, you know, like they talk about not just obtainable, but sustainable. And that's what this is about. And if people can realize that what's the beauty of this business and how to fall in love. I love what you said, you know, fall in love with your intentions for the day. Fall in love with the intention of who you might meet, whose life you might change because of this business or because of these products. I think if too many times, you know, we get focused on, you know, like, oh, meeting a goal versus like whose life is going to be changed because I introduced them to this product, this, you know, this business, whatever. You know, it's like Kyla winning the award, you know, winning the little blue box just now. That, I mean, I've met her twice or 3 times in my life, but I fell in love with her, this woman, you know, who's there with her newborn baby and her little girl. And now I'm like, wow, like, and watching these little kids grow and seeing how that, you know, what they're doing now with their businesses, and, you know, because of this. And that's, once again, setting the intentions on whose life can be changed. So I love
I
it.
think there's a sentence that says it best, and I ask the question in a lot of businesses. I go right to the CEO or the leadership of the company. And I say, do you want to look good or be good?
Mm-hmm.
And in this day and age, it's really easy to look good. It's really easy to put up a Facebook page or a website, and it's got all the bells and whistles. You pay somebody a lot of money to make it look good. The question is, can you back it up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you want to make sure that you be good as well as look good.
Awesome. Well, anybody have any final? I adore you, Scott, and Dallas, and the puppies. I mean, just your friendship means more to me than anything, and just your friendship with my, you know, to my kids and my husband, you know, it means more to me than you can ever imagine. Even though we're just across town, I just know that we're always there. And I think that's the beauty of this community as well. Is there anybody have a final question or any final words of wisdom, Scott? Or anything you want to tell people?
I'll leave you with a really quick story that's really important. One of the people I really love to talk about is a gentleman named Walter Russell, who lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s, died in, I think, around the 60s. But he really understood the laws of the universe and understood how to get results. And in fact, there was a book written about him called The Man Who Tapped the Secrets to the Universe. And I tell a story about, you know, him being a bellman in a hotel and making a lot of connections and lifelong connections. But there's a story that's even more important. When he was 15 years old, he was going to art school, and in the, trying to work his way through art school, he was trying to make a lot of money, but he was also dating a woman who was 18 years old. He was dating an older woman. And they were walking down the street one day, and this was in like the late 1800s, 1880. And they were walking down the street, and there was this big poster on the wall about there was an opera series that was coming to town. And she loved the opera, and she looked at him, she goes, I want to go to the opera. Will you take me to the opera? And he goes, well, okay. And he had like $7 in his pocket. And he realized, he goes, okay, well, I'll see what I can do about taking you to one of the shows. She goes, no, I don't want to go to one of the shows. I'm going to go to the entire series. And he goes, that's quite impossible. And she goes, that's a word I never thought I would hear out of your mouth. And he took it to heart, and he realized that impossible probably should be eliminated from his vocabulary. So this tickets were going to go on sale the next day. So he went home, went to bed, and he goes, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off, but I'm just going to have blind faith. And sure enough, he got up in the morning, he went down to the ticket counter at the Opera House, and there was already a line forming. There was people in front of him who were waiting to buy tickets. And he got in the end of the line with $7 in his pocket, knowing that the entire series cost $79. And he had no idea how he was going to do it. But he got in line, just like many of you got into the business, and you had no understanding yet on how it was going to happen, but you had blind faith. You had complete faith in, you know, the people who supported you, the people who introduced you, but you had blind faith that you were going to make it happen. And sure enough, he stood there with absolute faith and intention that when he got to the window, he'd figure out a solution. And all of a sudden, a gentleman came and tapped him on the shoulder. He said, Sonny, do you mind selling me your place in line? I've got to get to work, and I'll pay $5 if you sell me your place in line. Now, by the way, when I say $79, this was in the 1800s. So that's like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars today, if we look at the value of money proportionally. So he says, I'll do better than that. And he got out a little pocketbook that he had in his back pocket, and he got out a pen, and he says, why don't I do this? If you give me the money for the tickets and pay me $5, I will deliver the tickets. I'll stand in line, buy your tickets, and I'll deliver them to you or at your office. And just like a bookie at the racetrack, all of a sudden these other people go, hey, will you do that for me? Will you do that for me? Will you do that for me? And people started surrounding him, giving him money, and never even asked his name or his address. And literally, by the time he got to the window, He had enough money to pay for the entire series for his girlfriend and for himself, and he had $100 left over to apply to his art school. So there are times in this business what may be frustrating, it may be challenging, you may not think you have enough resources, and maybe it's just not enough resourcefulness, but whatever it is, I challenge you to get in line. And I'll leave you with that, guys. It's been a joy to spend time with you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scotty. I appreciate it. And looking forward to seeing you guys real soon. So thanks, everybody. Bye.
Have a great night.
Thanks,
Or day.
Scott.
Take care.